This is the Biz News Podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
Where did all the money go? Any business owner wondering that might also wonder if they ever made any money in the first place. Business management consultant Tom Griffiths says he's heard those questions all too many times, often from business owners who are totally enmeshed in the weeds of running a business. Over the next 10 minutes, Mr. Griffiths offers advice and some tips that can help even the most be-weeded small business owner get closer to running their business like a CEO, with the numbers driving sound decision making. Tom, you say you can improve the profits and cash flow in any business. Come on now, I challenge you on that.
Yeah, well, I think the key is to break it down into a process that works for any business. And so, yeah, for me, it's all about looking at the business, looking at the numbers, interpreting them and understanding what's going on in the business at the moment, and then using that information to drive what we do next with a goal of increasing profits or cash flow.
When you do this with a small business, how successful have you been? Can you give us some examples?
Yeah. So, for example, one of my clients, Reese, when I first started working with him, he basically said, I've been running this business for 3 years. I may as well have I may as well have just got a job. I've been extremely stressed. I've got nothing to show for it. I've been paying myself the bare minimum, and the business isn't worth anything because I've been, it's fully dependent on me. And so, there's not a quick fix. It's not a magic pill. It's a process that we implement. And so together, what we do is we review the numbers every month. We look at what's working. We analyze the numbers so we can see clearly, not just by the numbers, but what is working and not working in the business in terms of the daily things that he's doing, what is driving cash flow and what's not. And then we use that information to drive what he's doing next. So over the last kind of 6 months or so, he's doubled his take-home pay, and profits in the business. They're on track to increase by about 80-90% this year.
Do you see a point where he will have stopped creating a job for himself and actually have a business? At what point would that be?
Yeah, I mean, he'll get to that point. As I said, there's not a quick fix. It's not a magic pill. It's a process that the business owners have to follow, and most don't, because most business owners are experts in their craft, and they start their business thinking that they're really good at their craft, so they can just start a business and do more of that. But inadvertently, what they realize is that further down the line, that they have to actually understand how business works, and how to keep the business healthy. Otherwise, the business suffers and the business fails. And that's one of the reasons that about 50% of businesses actually don't make it to their 5th birthday.
And you say you can help business people understand their financials. What don't they understand? The bookkeeper comes in and says, sign these checks, correct?
Yeah. But in terms of on a monthly basis, understanding how much money the business is actually making. So, the key numbers that I like to look at: revenue, gross profit, net profit, and cash. Most business owners don't understand what those numbers are every month. Most business owners don't really understand the difference between them either. And so very often, by the time a bookkeeper actually sends the business owner the numbers, they're out of date by 3 or 4 weeks. And for the business owners that don't even have a bookkeeper, they rely on their accountant, and their accountant they'll generally meet once a year, 6 months or so after the year end, so that they're well out of date by that point. And some accountants do send the numbers to the business owner in a timely fashion, but then it's still up to the business owners to actually interpret those numbers and understand what they mean.
Give us an example of what financials a small business owner typically needs to understand but does not.
Yeah, so I would say for a business owner who isn't in the habit of reviewing their numbers regularly, just start with something. So like I said a few minutes ago, the critical 4 numbers that you need to understand: revenue, gross profit, net profit, and cash. And you can break it down even more simply if you want to just do 3: revenue, profit, and cash. So revenue is what you make. Profit is what you make minus what you spend, and then cash flow is what you actually keep. And very often there's a difference between profit and cash flow. For example, and that's another cause of confusion very often. It's that a business owner will look at the income statement. The income statement will say they made a profit of X, but that number will be wildly different to the amount of cash that's actually in the bank account ready for them to take out. And the reason for those differences are because of transactions that basically take place outside the income statement. And it's very difficult for a business owner to actually join an income statement, a balance sheet up. So yeah, yeah, tracking both profit and cash flow separately are very important things.
Tom, you also say you can tell a business owner what's working and what's not, and they will not have realized what was not working. How could that possibly be? Surely business owners understand what doesn't work.
Yeah, so very often their interpretation of what's not working will not actually be the most important thing, or will not be the actual thing. So what we do to actually get the answer, or the most important answer, is to break down the numbers on a monthly basis into what I call the 16 drivers. So every business is driven by the same 16 drivers. Doesn't matter whether it's Uber or Amazon or a one-person dental practice on a high street. They're driven by the same drivers. So what we do is we break the business down into those numbers, and then we calculate those numbers for the business. And then we compare them to our targets, and the targets are set so that if the business owner achieves them, they're going to be on track to achieving their long-term goal of the business, whether that's selling it in 5 years, working 1 day a week, whatever it may be. And by comparing the target to the actuals, or the target to the forecast, we can essentially put a red, amber, green score against every one of those 16 drivers in the business. And that way we can focus on the most important drivers of the business so that we can create objectives and next steps for the next 30 days for the business owner to focus on. So that way we make sure that every 30 days we're reviewing these numbers, and we set objectives and next steps so that the business owner is focusing on the most important things. And that's what we do to essentially bring the business owner out of the day-to-day, from being stuck in the weeds to being focused on the business. And that's how we reduce stress, and everything just gets better as part of that process.
That must be a surprising moment for the business owner, correct?
Yeah, as I said, it's not a magic fix. This doesn't happen overnight. This is a process that we implement together. And yes, they do feel significantly notably better, within a month or two of following this process.
Tom, what's your background? How did you get into all of this?
Yeah, so my background is in finance, funnily enough. I worked in the city in London in banking for 7 years, and then I decided to leave, launch my own business. And in running my own business, I obviously learned how to run a business, but I also found that a lot of people in my network were contacting me and asking me for help and support in running their business, in doing things that I considered to be the basics. So managing profitability, making sure you're charging the right amount, making sure you're on top of the numbers, making sure you're using the numbers and you're reviewing the numbers to work out what to do next to actually grow the business and improve your profits and cash flow. And so I realized that if people in my network were contacting me about this, then this must be quite a big problem that a lot of business owners face. And so I essentially kind of doubled down my focus on to solving this problem, or having the biggest impact I can in solving this problem.
And you have obviously succeeded in your own business.
Yes, I would say I have a growing, successful business. Yeah.
Where can our viewers and listeners get more information about you and your company?
So the name of my business is synergycfosolutions.co, or Synergy CFO Solutions is the name, but synergycfosolutions.co is the website. On my website, or somewhere around this podcast, there'll be a link to a page, which I will give away the 16 drivers that I mentioned earlier on in this podcast. It's a report. You can just go onto the page, download it. It breaks down exactly what the 16 drivers are, how to calculate them for your business, and then a simple process that you can follow to actually get into the habit of reviewing these numbers and then using them to make better decisions for your business so that you can have a growing, successful, profitable business.
What would you like to add that we have not talked about? Could be anything.
I think I've covered the basics. I'd say if you're not reviewing your numbers, just start doing something. Start reviewing those three numbers that I mentioned: revenue, which is how much you make, profit, how much you make minus how much you spend, and then cash. And just every month, just write down on a spreadsheet or a piece of paper, whatever works for you, the balance of those numbers in your bank account, or calculate the numbers and write them down, and monitor what happens over time. If you're not doing anything, start doing that.
You've been listening to the Biz News Podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@biznews.com. That's bizgnus.com. Thanks for listening.